Well, good evening, friends. I welcome you to our next episode of Expert Opinion. I'm Chris, and I have the privilege of serving as a host of Expert Opinion every Sunday, as well as being the lead pastor of the Journey Church in Harrisburg City. And so glad that you are joining us tonight on Expert Opinion. Over the last many weeks, every night we've had a conversation series, and we've been dealing and talking about a variety of topics, things of like health concern and mental health. And Mayor Papenfus had joined us, our local mayor. We had conversations around race and racism and immigration and DACA and addiction. And tonight in particular, I'm excited about our next guest, who is a local Harrisburg legend, Cole Goodman. He is a faithful member of the Journey Church, and I have the privilege of having some opportunity to hang out with Cole over the time. So I'm going to bring Cole up on the screen. Thank you, Cole, for joining us tonight, man.
Hi, Pastor. It's good to be here with you. I love our conversations. I always love them. I'm excited for tonight. I'm really excited for tonight.
Well, thanks, man. You know, I'm excited. And you in particular, over the last month, I would say you have been one of the key leaders of the protests that have been happening, the Black Lives Matter movement that's happening, even just regionally for us and in our city and elsewhere. And so, Cole, I would love for you just to like introduce yourself to us and maybe someone who doesn't know you, and tell us like what propelled you to be such a prominent person in this moment.
So again, thanks for having me on. As Pastor Kris said, my name's Cole Goodman. My official title, I would say, is I'm an elected state committee member of the Democratic Party representing Dauphin County, and I serve on the executive board of the state party of Pennsylvania, and one of the youngest members of the executive board on the state party. But that is very separate from my activism soul. And I think, to answer your question, what got me so into this movement was, at least in Central PA, being on the front lines from the very beginning with so many of my movement brothers and sisters. The first Harrisburg protest that everyone talks about that kind of turned into something we didn't want it to, maybe also from outside sources, but we've really come together and have done about 8 protests since that have been completely peaceful, and we're starting to see change being enacted. But I think also what makes this movement so powerful is that you see so many leaders from the activism community in the Harrisburg region, like Dr. K from Harrisburg Young Professionals of Color, Kevin Maxton, and so on, coming together and really propelling this and making this a really great movement. So it's been an honor to just be a part of it.
So tell me, Cole, a little bit more around kind of, you name your activism kind of spirit within you. Like tell me why, and I think it depends on, we have probably a variety of people who are listening, right? We have probably people who are listening who completely understand and are supportive, and then there are people who just have questions around why. And so in particular, Cole, like, why are you proudly a part of this movement that's happening even regionally?
Well, because I think the term that's really come to light in this movement, Black Lives Matter, is just so important. And it's important to me as a Black man, but it's important for me to see my Black brothers and sisters as well being treated fairly, justly, and especially making sure they're being treated fairly, justly by the people that are sworn to protect them, whether that be police departments or elected officials too. But that's a whole nother tea. Right. but that's what really propelled me. I think every person of color in this country has experienced either the raw racism in this country, or they've experienced what I like to refer to as slight racisms, which being followed around a store or being targeted. And even at the first protest, I was one of the people that was creating a peaceful barrier between our local HPD officers and protesters that were trying to throw bricks at them. And when the state police came, me and my brothers and sisters, we still got pepper sprayed. We still got knocked around with guard sticks. So it really, and in that situation, if we had some de-escalation training in this state, maybe it could have been handled differently. So just from my own experiences, but from also hearing stories of others in the movement, it's really enlightened my activism soul, which I also think, and I think we'll talk about, I believe being a social activist and a civil rights activist is a very Christian thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about that, because I want to know, like, I think probably a question that happens, and cool, I've been a part of just at least one time clearly with you in the Capitol, and I guess the question I would want to ask of you is, like, what are you hoping for because of your activism, because of standing up in Harrisburg, in Hummelstown, in Carlisle, in Mechanicsburg? Like, what is your hope? What is your desire? What's your prayer because of your activism right now?
Well, I think we're fighting two battlefronts here. I think one is, and this is one that I think we will see tangible change in the near future, is legislative reforms. A banning of chokeholds nationally or statewide, a deputy inspector general that is firmly has the sole resolve of finding and rooting out corruption in police departments, de-escalation trainings. So there is currently in the House of Representatives and the state Senate, because of everyone out there who went and marched, legislation going through our state house right now for police reforms that was unanimously voted on by the House of Representatives. So what we have been marching for tangible legislative change is starting to get in the works. We're not done yet, but it's starting to get in the works. But we're also fighting we are finally standing up and fighting against the racism that has been interwoven in the fabric of this country. And, you know, it's not just us, obviously, who have been doing this. My parents, my grandparents, your parents, your grandparents, and our past generations have been fighting, because this is a generational fight. But it's time for us to pick up the mantle and take that fight and start changing the structure and the culture in this country.
Yeah, I love that. Cool. You know, there's a song. It was at the end of the movie Selma, and I think John Legend sings a glory song, and it says it takes the wisdom of the elders and the young people's energy to make change. And so, tell me a little bit more. Like, and I have seen it and been there. Like, there's this movement of young adults who are saying enough is enough. Black lives matter in a really real way. And so, like, tell me about that experience. Like, I'm thankful that this is becoming a young people's movement. And tell me a little bit more about that experience. And why if someone's older right now, why should we listen to the youth of today who are standing up and making a statement?
Well, so I think the fascinating thing about our protests in the city and nationally have been that they've been multicultural. They've been across, we've had the LGBTQ plus community stand with Black Lives Matter very firmly. We have Asian Americans, white Americans, Black Americans, Native Americans coming and standing. I saw an Amish person holding a sign saying Black Lives Matter. So this is, it's crossing demographic lines, but it's, as you said, it's a movement that is being fueled, and the center of the movement, that fire, is from us young people. And that's why it's so powerful, because we're not going to stop. And that's key. We're not going to stop until we see reforms. We're going to keep holding our elected officials accountable. And young people are a sleeping giant in this nation. And I think this could be the movement, the energy, the aura that really awakens young people getting involved civically and activism wise.
Yeah. So tell me, I would love just a little bit more specifics around, like, your actual experience, like, marching. And I know you've had positive experiences and it has been meaningful, and you've experienced haterism, you've experienced negativity, you've experienced racism in the midst of it. So tell me a little bit about that, Cole, and what's been good about that and what's been not so helpful.
So some very what this movement has really blessed me with is some lifelong memories that have uplifted my spirit, but also have really caused an inner spiritual warfare within myself. I'll give two quick examples of each.
Yeah.
The first protest, obviously, I had never been pepper sprayed like that or hit like that in my life, and that really opened my eyes to a small fraction of police brutality. I come nowhere near, obviously, to Eric Garner, to Mir Rice, because they're dead, and that's the real crux of the issue. But that really took the full mask off my face to this brutal issue. But then after that, 4 days later, we're all standing at the Capitol. Yeah, and you were there too, Pastor Kris. And Governor Wolf comes down and says, "I'm going to march with you." And that was one of the biggest honors of my life, because I think he's the first governor in the nation to take that stand protest wise, and got a tremendous amount of flack for it. But that's because Governor Wolf realizes that all lives can't matter until Black lives matter. And I've experienced recently the raw racism that is sown in our country. I had a local reporter somewhere come up to me and say, well, let me get the Negro perspective. Called me a Negro. I've been in, SHIP and Lycans in Northern Dauphin County, where they're going to call you the N-word. They're going to call you a monkey. And that's just real. That's real. The real raw racism that we're standing up and we're not going to tolerate anymore.
Right. So these are real people this month who are calling you these words.
2020.
Right. I think
it's 2020. It's unacceptable. It's just there's no excuse anymore, and there's no excuse for it anymore. I think we've gone through decades in this country where people will try to make excuses for it, try to make excuses for family members who act like that. No, I'm trying to start a hashtag right now saying make Thanksgiving uncomfortable, make Christmas uncomfortable, because we need to start doing that to changing the fabric that our country is currently interwoven in, which isn't healthy.
Yeah. So tell me, I saw this on your Facebook, Cole, the story about the young guys at the Hummelstown rally, right? The young guys who were wearing, I think one guy had like Confederate flag pants on, something like that, or a shirt.
Oh, that was
Lycans. Tell me about that experience, right? And so you've encountered people who have come with probably a level of skepticism, right? There are some who come who are allies, who are all in, and then there are some who come with skepticism. Tell me about maybe that story or others where you've had a chance to actually interact with people who maybe fundamentally disagree with you.
There are a lot of, actually, I will say, misconceptions about Northern Dauphin County. And I think that really has to be said, and that's not said enough in our county. There are wonderful people up in Northern Dauphin County. Actually, my favorite place to campaign when I was running for office. So that moment that you're talking about happened with two gentlemen who came to watch our rally, one in a Make America Great Again hat, and one with a Confederate flag down his pants. Excuse me. And after the rally, I surprised them. And I went up to them and I was like, guys, I hope you were able. And they were shocked. They were shocked because they're always met with that hostility, and it goes both ways. We're very hostile towards each other. But I went up to them and I was just like, guys, I hope you were able to learn something from our rally. And you're invited anytime to come discuss Black Lives Matter issues, to discuss issues that are plaguing the Black community. And if you want to march with us, you're welcome. And the man looked at me with the Make America Great Again hat on, and he said, we're here to listen.
Wow.
We were here to learn. Because we've never heard anyone talk about Black Lives Matter in our community. So I think we have a lot of communities that we throw on stereotypes for, but there is a crack that can be penetrated to really educate communities about creating an equity and equal system for our Black brothers and sisters.
Wow. Well, and it seems like the power of in that moment, Cole, of just like engaging in conversation with someone who we perceive as the enemy or the opposite person, and the power of just like building that bridge, right? And the power of you just like engaging in actual conversation. And I would love to know, like, this is like, would that be a hope of yours even through this? Is like, how do we, like, maybe the question actually I want to ask is like, I firmly believe, Cole, I am in solidarity with you as a fellow brown male. Like, there is a realness to racism, overt and subvert. There's a realness to a system in which some have advantage and some do not. And there's realness, and yet, cool. Like, I support and the church folks knows. I think the power of just making a stance, right? The freedom of speech and making a stance. But is this the only way that we can kind of achieve change in this moment? Like, what else would you say are ways for us to like experience substantial change in its systemic rooted level?
So I want to just touch on one of the first things you said. This movement, it's not about, like, the great thing is it's not about political parties. This is a morality movement.
That's right.
This is
right.
and it crosses political lines. So it's very, when you touch someone's soul, like those two gentlemen you were talking about, by coming up to them, I really believe I touched their soul. And they were just like, you know what, we really want to listen. So that's what's great about this movement is we invite everyone to join us. And it segues into your next question. How can you? And I think that's what you were asking. If I'm not down with like the protesting and the marching, how can I? Is that what you were asking, Pastor?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Okay. So there are many ways you can. Helping the Black community financially, going to Black-owned businesses, and tasting their food and enjoying yourself, even if it is takeout during COVID. But opening up your wallets and helping Black-owned businesses. This one's really important. We need to start holding our elected officials accountable. There are many elected officials in this region and in this state who have gotten a free pass for many, many years for not pushing legislation that would have helped our African American and brown communities. Everyone on this call, if you're not registered to vote, please get registered to vote. We won't see change until we start putting in people who are actually going to bring forth reforms, hold police officials, officers, and chiefs accountable. And it's not going to happen if we don't get out there and vote. So that would be my second thing. Third, I would, and this is something I've appreciated that my friends have done. I would reach out to your friends of color, and don't be overbearing, because this is a very tough time for all of us. But just be like, if I can help, how can I help? Let me know how I can help. And then on the flip side, if you are of the dominant culture, if you are Caucasian, if you see racism, we need you to speak up. Like it can't take the victim to fix the issue. Like, we need everyone, especially our Caucasian brothers and sisters, to join with us and helping us use your privilege to enact change, especially legislative change in this country.
Yeah, I think that's good. And I would echo some of what you said, Cole. I think there's something powerful about being an ally in this moment, right? And to stand up, and there are sometimes overt experiences of racism that we just need people just to say, like, no, like, that is, and often that can come from a white person's perspective in a way that has power, that is using their voice to help lift up someone who is feeling oppressed in that moment. I would like to, you named this earlier, but I want to kind of dive a little deeper in this. Cool. Like you named the police reform bill that was unanimously passed in the House in our state. Tell me a little bit more about that and maybe the highlights of that if you're aware of that.
The House bill is a proposition that is, I believe our representatives from Philadelphia really champion this bill, like Chris Rabb and Malcolm Kenyatta. And it's to, I believe, and anyone out there can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not the type of person, like if I'm wrong, call me out on it. But to a banning of chokeholds statewide, which is very, very, very important. And I believe that's also going through the national level as well. Creating citizen review boards or advisory boards that can help advise elected officials when there are possible cases of police brutality. I to be honest, I need to go read that specific piece of legislation a little bit more, but I know they have those two components in it. But for any police reform to pass a Republican-controlled House of Representatives unanimously is absolutely incredible.
Which is a sign that the work that's happening, the movement in which, like, of standing up and saying Black Lives Matter, that that we just want to hold more people accountable in a way of protecting life on the side of life. I think it's making an impact. And I have a couple of questions that I want to ask, and we'll invite anyone who's also listening to ask any other questions. And here's one. It's from Elizabeth. And she wrote to her local police department asking about de-escalation, and she was happy to learn that on July 8th of this year, nearly half of the Lower Paxton Township Police will be receiving 8 additional hours of training titled Tactical Communications: The Art of De-Escalation class. And the remainder of the department will also receive training later this summer. Is this something that's happening statewide? Like, is that happening statewide, Cole, or is that just specific to Lower Paxton Township at this point?
To the best of my knowledge, that is not happening statewide, and it's not happening with our state police. We're having a real battle with our state police when it's coming to reforms, and that's going to be an ongoing battle. However, you're absolutely correct. There are local police departments, Harrisburg Police Department, Lower Paxton Police Department, and I know that some reforms may be put up in Mechanicsburg Police Department. So there are reforms that are coming forth from different legislative bodies locally. I don't know of any statewide, and I don't believe we've had any de-escalation training for our state officers.
Okay. Here's another question from Elizabeth as well. I think this is a really poignant question, one that I would love to hear your comments, Cole. How do you get into the mindset to have a conversation and listen to those who are opposing Black Lives Matter? And you've had this experience firsthand. Yeah, that's a big one, right?
That's a huge one, Pastor. I can't be on here and say sometimes I need a drink.
Hey, that's fair, man.
You know, that's a great question. I have a really, this is going to sound like this is a weird answer, but it's very truthful. I have a really great friend group of my friends like Bailey and C, and they travel with me all around to these Black Lives Matter protests. Actually, my friend Shivania as well.
That's right.
And they really help keep me grounded, and they experience the things I experience at the rallies from different sides, from being LGBTQ plus members and people of color, and then we can talk about it later. So I think having that avenue, and which I'm really blessed for, to vent and talk has me able to wake up the next day and say, oh, I'm definitely gonna go. But also those moments, those powerful moments of talking to the opposing side can also be really rejuvenating too, because being able to build bridges and not walls is, especially in this climate that we're in politically, is a real touching thing. And it's really when it does happen, it's really nice to be a part of it as well.
Yeah. And I think that's good for anyone, right, Cole? That like in moments of extreme, not trauma, but extreme stressful moments, just to have people who are there supportive and who are in it with you, that you're not a lone ranger. I mean, that's just, I think there's power in that. Now, I want to ask a question, and I want to frame it in this way. And there has been some pushback around the Black Lives Matter movement, the actual organization. And I don't think you and I aren't necessarily representatives of that organization, so I don't feel like it's our need to understand it in the full way, because you're not, you're not representing that group. But help me, how do you differentiate, or do you, your role as someone who's standing up for Black Lives Matter and the organization itself? Do you draw any lines there, or what's that like for you, Cole?
Black Lives Matter to me is very, very much a movement. And it's and when I go out and chant Black Lives Matter, I'm saying it as a Black male.
That's right.
This is a very personal fight. The personal fight for me, for anyone else that is out marching, Black males, females, or trans Black community. This is very personal. So when I go out and I scream Black Lives Matter, I'm quite honestly, I'm not representing any organization. I'm representing my race. I'm representing who I am. And and everyone else that goes out there. Actually, this is the only blanket statement I'll make. This is the only blanket statement I'll make. I think everyone else that goes out there who is a Black male or female is going out there because it is personal.
Right.
We're not working for any organization. Right. And if there is an organization that isn't doing well or is in, and I'm not saying that the Black Lives Matter movement is, because they didn't. Actually, a lot of evidence found that outside sources came in and incited a lot of violence and riots in communities of color. But if someone was inciting violence, I would denounce it. But I will still scream Black Lives Matter the next day without any hesitation and issue, because all lives can't matter until Black Lives Matter.
That's right. Yeah, and I appreciate you naming that, Cole. There's some conversation that we've had internally. I've had some, even as myself, of that I think so often, actually, what's interesting is Black Lives Matter, that statement is often attached to a particular organization. But I appreciate you. For me, when I say Black Lives Matter, I'm saying my life matters, that your life matters, Cole. Right. The persons of color in our church, their life matters. And that's the line, and not needing to be attached to something different. Now, so I just appreciated that, Cole, and the statement that you say, Black Lives Matter, their lives can't matter until all lives matter can't matter until Black Lives Matter. And so, were you going to say something, man?
No, you're good. You're good.
So Barb, who is from the Journey, I think you know Barb, she asked this question: how do you handle the protest and COVID-19 risk all in one space? I bet there's a question you get a lot. What would you say?
All the time. And
that's
especially right. From my own mother. She always asks me. Which absolutely, she's right. And Barb, you're right. That has been something I've been really proud about, actually, at our protests. Almost everyone is masked. We try to observe social distancing as much as possible. There's hand sanitizers that are always going around. And no one is talking face to face. We all try to observe the guidelines that are being given to us, because that's very, very important. Sometimes the protests get so emotional. Someone's getting so sweaty they have to rip off their mask and scream. And I'm just going to say, I get it, because these are very emotional protests, but everyone really does come with the mindset of, we want to keep you safe, because when we wear masks, we're not keeping ourselves safe, we're keeping our community safe. That's right. And we're trying to advocate for our community while also at the same time keeping our community safe.
That's good. I think that's good, Cole. Here's a question I want to ask, and then I think we're almost, if there's any other questions from the audience, feel free to ask them now. I want to ask you, Cole, you know about the Journey, right? So we're a multi-ethnic church. We're justice oriented. We want to seek liberation from the evils of the world, such as racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia. You kind of know where we stand, right? We want to be a prominent voice for life, a prominent voice for the radical, inclusive nature of God and God's love. So I would love to ask you, from your perspective, Cole, like, what should churches and people of faith be doing in this moment? I don't think churches can be off the hook in this moment, or pastors or church leaders. From your perspective, Cole, what would you love to be seeing churches and pastors and leaders doing, Christians doing in this moment?
I think we see such a distrust with, especially our generation, with the church, because in so many key moments in history, the church was either neutral or the church was on the wrong side of history.
That's right.
And so rolling into this movement and 2020, it's time for the church to really start being a partner with not only the Black Lives Matter movement, but being a partner with the community that is crying out for help on issues like these. That is why I appreciate the journey so much, because you guys are taking a stance, and that's so important. And by churches taking a stand, you're not alienating everyone. You're helping those that are most vulnerable and are of most need in society. That's what you're also saying when you say Black Lives Matter. So that it's silence is compliance, and silence is complicity. And it's time to stop being silent. It's time to stop being neutral. And it's time to start taking stands, because if you don't stand for something, you don't stand for anything. And I think the church, and I'm not just talking about the Methodist Church, I'm talking about all denominations, need to start taking stands on social justice issues like these.
That's right. No, cool. I think that is so right. If anyone's listening right now and you're part of the journey in their church and you want to know, at least there's for me some clearly biblical rationale for that, of what you're naming, right? And I think you said this earlier. I think the role of the church is to be prophetic. It's meant to speak up against power and evil and injustice of the world. I think the church is oriented towards that. Often churches don't do that, but I think churches should. And I think of a prominent voice. So cool. I thank you for the shout out. Thanks for that's kind of what my hope is. And you know that you know me, so that's my hope for us at the journey. So I'm gonna put, if anyone has questions for Cole, I want to have one final question for you, and then I'll give you a final word. This is the question I've asked every single guest in this season, right? And what's one thing that you hope that we as a society or people learn because of COVID-19, or even because of even the Black Lives Matter movement at this point? What's one thing that you hope we learn because of all of this?
I think that COVID has really shown the deep structural holes in our society. When it comes to the poorest of our poor, to when it comes to communities of color being disproportionately affected by COVID, which is a fact. When it comes to how many people were really living on the edge and on a shoestring budget, and many in our society and our leadership thinking that that's okay for that to be a thing, even though, and Pastor, I'm about to drop some bars here, that even though that many of us, and when I say us, I mean Americans, go around thumping our chests, waving our flag. We're the best country in the world. We are a country that is still improving. We are a country that has a lot of work to do. We are a country that is structurally broken. We're a country that has overt racism being shown to our Black brothers and sisters every single day and being shot and killed in the streets. I hope we learn from all of this that we have a lot of work to do. And if we don't start putting in that work, more people are going to die. Whether it's from COVID, or whether it's from police brutality, whether it's from housing discrimination and that mother that has to live on the street that because she was Black, she was denied a house, her kids don't have food. Like, these are real issues. And this pandemic has brought it all to light. So if you can't see it now, you're sleeping. And if you can't see it now in your local community, but also the nation.
Cool. I think that was you were starting to preach there, man. So I appreciated that. You were starting to lay some, and what I want to say for those who are listening, and maybe those who agree, or maybe those who are struggling, I invite you to go deeper with us, even at the journey. I think the power of what Cole was saying is that we need to listen more, right? And I need to listen more. We need to listen more to persons in our community who are struggling, persons in our community who have been victimized, who have been harmed. And so I think there's the power of what this movement is also saying. Cool, to shout out Barb. Just wanted you to know she's totally behind your movement. Keep being who you are. We're praying for you. Shout out from Barb. And
thanks, Barb.
Kevin appreciated the concrete examples of what we can do as white allies and spiritual allies. And so, cool. The journey is showing you some love tonight, my man. So just wanted you to know that. Any kind of final words that you want to share tonight?
Yeah. Yes, please. So I want to leave with a few statements. If you are out protesting, or you're thinking about going out and protesting, just remember this: we're not protesting to impress people. We're protesting to impact people. We're protesting to empower people. We're protesting to educate people. So this can't just be a hashtag. This can't just be your high school spirit week. This is a movement that is saving lives. So I just want to leave off with that. But also, my Caucasian brothers and sisters, you are as important in this movement. And I just want to repeat that, because sometimes as people of color, it is emotionally draining to be shouting out racism from all around you, all different spectrum. We need our white brothers and sisters to stand with us, no matter where you're from, no matter what community you're from. Call out racism. Yeah. Call out racephobia. Call out Islamophobia. That we need to start changing the fabric, and we're not going to do it if we can't join together. But we are, and I see it. Right. And our protests are powerful. And next time I'm on, Pastor Kris, we're going to have some reforms probably passed throughout Dauphin County, Cumberland, Pennsylvania.
Hey, well, cool. On behalf of myself, on behalf of the Journey Church, thanks for being a faithful member of our church, man. Thanks for being a supporter of us. But really, thanks for leading us in the change. I think it's going to take young people's energy like you, who will continue to inspire all of us to seek substantial change in the world and to resist all evil. As Elizabeth quoted in her, she posted, we need to resist all evil, injustice, and oppression, whatever forms they present themselves. And so that is our shared work. So cool. Thank you so much. Friends who tuned in tonight, thank you so much for our conversation on expert opinion. I appreciate this moment every Sunday night to have conversation with you all. So blessings, my friends, to you tonight.